Hi, this is Jen from Repose, and I'm here to finally make a video about the pelvic list, an exercise I teach in almost all the classes and workshops. Some of you that do private sessions with me, it's one of the exercises I get you to practice at home. So first of all, I'm going to just talk about gait in general. There's been a lot more interest in that, and the how to get more out of your walk workshop, the foot workshops, and my upcoming foot gymnastics for dynamic aging workshop. So there's a few different components of a posterior driven gait. I'm going to stand up. You're not going to be able to see my face just because of the camera lens. So I talk a lot about, instead of the gait that most of us have, just from the way we've been sitting in chairs, our footwear, our walking environments, which are uniformly flat, most of us have developed a gait where we kind of hip flex, we lift up one leg, and then we just kind of fall forward. And to get out of that, to try and get more of a posterior driven gait, there's several components, of which the pelvic list addresses kind of one of them. So first of all, you need hip extension. Hip extension is where the femur bone, the hip joint, comes behind the pelvis. Dorsiflexion at the ankle, which is when the shin bone and the foot get closer together. And so when you're standing on the back leg and swinging the front leg forward, you need strength and mobility right down the posterior leg. You need to get that hip extension and that dorsiflexion as you're bringing this forward. So you can see as my leg comes forward, I'm getting a bit of hip extension and dorsiflexion at the ankle. You also need foot strength and mobility, which are basically the same thing. As that back foot peels off the ground, you need some mobility through the foot. But the other thing you need is hip strength. So as you're standing on one leg and balancing, it's a series of balancing. As you're balancing on that leg and swinging the opposite leg forward, you need strength to balance. So the pelvic list is an exercise that helps with getting that balancing strength. So basically, there's many ways to come onto one leg. You could hike the hip up with the muscles in the back. You could bend the knee. But in this version, in the pelvic list, we're actually trying to come onto one leg by lifting the pelvis. So if I'm pressing down from this hip, I'm kind of on an uneven surface here. If I'm pressing down from this hip straight down through my heel, I can lift my pelvis, both legs stay straight, and this leg comes off the floor, or vice versa. Pressing straight down from the hip through the heel to lift the opposite leg up. Okay, so once you've kind of got that action, so it's a tricky action if you're not used to doing it. And so I do recommend, also we talk a lot in the classes about getting the weight back so that you have a vertical leg, so that your hips are backed up and you've got a vertical leg from the center of your hip down to your ankle, weights more back in your heels. So first back up the pelvis and really focus on pressing from this hip straight down, as if you're trying to push your leg through the floor, and that's what gets the other hip up. Okay, so once you've proven that you can do that on the floor, and if you're not used to balancing, then please use a wall, or you can have a chair nearby that you're holding onto so that you don't fall over. Once you've proven that you can balance like that on the floor, and I'm just going to take my socks off, then you can step up either onto a bottom stair, if you have a yoga block, or a really thick book. Now when I pelvic list, I want this foot off the floor, but I don't want it down here, so the block is now the floor. So to get my foot above the floor and be balancing, I need to push down into the block, so that I'm pushing so that the floating foot comes higher than the foot that's on the block. Okay? Your heel needs to be on the block, but it's okay if your toes hang off the front. The other thing is to line up the foot straight. So if you draw a point from that ankle down to the ground, and you drew that point forward to the outer, the base of the pinky toe, then that line would be parallel to the edge of the block. So it'll feel a little bit pigeon-toed. If you get knee pain when you do the exercise in this alignment, I'm not going to explain neutral knee pits if you haven't done it with me before, but just think about externally rotating the femur so that you'll end up coming more onto the outer edge of your foot, your pinky toe edge of your foot. So once you're here, you can use the control of the hips to slowly lower and to come back up. Watch that you're not jutting this hip way out to the side. You want to keep this hip in. So you can almost like take a hand there and press in so that you're really using the strength to come up and down. When you come up, you're using these muscles concentrically, and when you're slowly lowering down, you're using them eccentrically, meaning you're lengthening and strengthening at the same time. Oops. And it shouldn't take much to heat this area up. If you're noticing that you feel it more in your quads, like you're strengthening and heating up your quads at the front of your thigh, then I recommend taking it to a wall. I'm going to use this cabinet as my wall. You still want a vertical leg. So you still want, just checking the video there. You still want a vertical leg. So if you back the block all the way up to your wall, your bum is going to push so that your leg comes forward on an angle that's no longer vertical. So you need to take the block a few inches out from the wall so that when you look from the side, your bum can touch the wall, but your leg is still vertical. And then from here, you're just going to keep the pelvis back. So you're not pushing, you're not really leaning into the wall, but you're using it as a guide so that your bum never leaves the wall. It's like grazing the wall, as I'm going to show from the other side, so you can see my foot going up and down. Because if your bum comes off the wall, you know that you've shifted forward, and that might be why you're feeling it more in the quads. You keep your bum on the wall the whole time. Shouldn't take very many in order to feel it. We tend to be really weak in the lateral hips. It's also why, especially women, tend to stand like this. If you have a tendency to kind of stand into one hip, that's the opposite of using these muscles. So if you, even with both feet on the ground, if I think of the action of a pelvic list while I'm standing, I'm going to push down from this hip into the heel and bring both legs to straight. So it's really good for all kinds of people, strengthening the lateral hips. Have a great day.